Welcome to the CDRB Show, the podcast where you get to know some of the coolest people around. I'm your host, Christian Rodriguez, and each week I sit down with a special guest to chat about their life, career, and all the things that make them awesome. We cover some serious topics that matter, but don't worry, we keep it real and laid back. You never know what kind of insights and surprises you'll get, but one thing's for sure, we're always having a good time. So kick back, relax, and join us for another episode of the CDRB Show. Hello everyone and welcome to the new episode of the CDRB Show, the podcast where we invite different guests to talk about their lives and careers. Today I'm glad to be with Nicole England, Director of the Walton International Scholarship Program. How are you, Nicole?
Hey Christian, I'm great. Thank you for having me. How are you?
I'm doing well, thank you. Thank you for being here. And in every episode of the CDRB Show, we bring different guests, and the first part of the interview or conversation is basically to get to know more the person itself. So the first question I would like to ask you is, where were you born?
Right, yes, absolutely. So I was born and raised in Panama City, in the country of Panama. So in Central America, I lived there my whole life. Until I came to Ozarks to study. Mm-hmm.
When did you came to Ozarks?
So I was a freshman in 2014.
Okay.
And then I graduated from Ozarks in 2018.
So the whole life before that you spent it in Panama City?
Mm-hmm. Panama.
And how was your life when you were a child?
Yeah, so let's see. My family, I have an older sibling. His name is Michael. And my mom and dad. So I was born and raised in Panama, lived there my whole life. We lived in the city. So I've met a lot of students that live maybe outside of the city, or we like to see across the bridge. Mm-hmm. But I lived in the city. Most of my friends lived in the city too. The city life, of course, is a little bit different than the interior life. But it was great. I mean, we were a family of 4. In Panama, it's very common to go to a private school. So we went to a private school. It was called Colegio St. Mary's. Mm-hmm. And I was there from pre-K to 12th grade. So I only really had one school my entire life. My brother went to that school too. I have all my friends that I'm still in touch with today from that school. It was a bilingual school. Okay. So that definitely helped us a lot. And my dad is from the U.S., right? So my father was born in Florida. Oh. And when I was growing up, he would only talk to me in English. So that kind of helped paved the language for me since I was little. Yeah. He knew Spanish. He lived in Panama for over 20 years and still lives there today. But it was, English 24/7 since we were little. And I would talk to my mom only in Spanish.
Oh, wow. Mm-hmm. So in your house, there was that mixture of languages between English and Spanish. Yeah. With which language did you feel more comfortable with?
I would say Spanish just because I lived in a country that spoke Spanish. Mm-hmm. So the environment, my friends, when you're relaxing, everything was in Spanish. But my communication with my father was all in English, right? Mm-hmm. And I have a really close relationship with my father. I would say that I'm a daddy's girl. So in a sense, and it's funny because growing up in that environment, you have preferences, I think, depending on the situation. So if I was watching a movie, I would rather listen to the movie in English. Mm-hmm. If I was talking to my friends, and obviously Spanish. Yeah. So it kind of depends on the situation, I think, and even now it does too. Mm-hmm.
Huh. Also, you were mentioning that it is common to go to a private school in Panama. So there are not like public schools?
There are. There's several public schools in Panama. What happens, though, of course, if you live in the city, right, the education system is not the best, of course. So you will see a lot of families that are maybe middle income. You have the high income families, but middle and low income families, even though private school may be really expensive, we have a lot of hardworking families that put their children in private schools just for the quality of education. So like I had friends, so where I lived growing up, I would say our house was, with traffic, about an hour away. It could be 45 minutes to an hour, but it's really close. It's maybe 15, 20 minutes away from the school. But I had friends that lived in a place called Chorrera, which is across the bridge. And with traffic, that would be at least 2 hours.
Oh, wow.
So they would have to wake up around 5, 6 o'clock in the morning. Their parents would have to drop them off at school, get there by 7, 8, and then won't go back home until 5, 6. And tons of people are still doing that today, and it's just to get a better education.
So will you say that private education is better than public education in Panama?
It is. It is.
Yeah. Why do you think is?
I think I would say, again, it goes back to the Ministry of Education. There's a lot of, I guess I would say that there's maybe a couple of really good public schools in Panama that I know. Like my mom went to a public school, IPA. Perfect, great education. But even more now, so I think a lot of the, and it happens in a lot of countries in Central America, the government funding sometimes doesn't go where it really needs to go. So it's not that we have bad public schools. I don't think personally is more of, or the bad administration. Maybe the teachers are not compensated as they should, and then it creates more conflict with the teachers. There's more protests because the teachers are not satisfied. Then the students are out of school, so it kind of creates that tension in the education system.
Also, you were mentioning about your dad that he's American. So you had always the dual citizenship?
I did,
since the
beginning? Yes. So with my dad being an American, yes, I've always had a dual citizenship.
How did you end coming here to Ozarks in 2014, you said, right? How did you end coming here?
So that's a funny story. So I always like to say that I did not want to come to Ozarks, and I'll explain. I must mention that both of my parents are Ozarks alumni.
Okay.
Right? So growing up, all I ever heard was about Ozarks. And even more on top of that, which we can talk about a little bit further here soon, is my mom was a Walton Scholar, back in the day. So I was heavily exposed my entire life to the Walton Scholarship since I was born, due to my mom's experience with it, her friends who would then became like our close aunties and uncles, mi tios, tias, like they're Walton Scholars. And then from Ozarks, from the alumni side, from my parents. So that has always been invested in us since we were little as part of our family history. So moving close to 2014, graduating high school, looking at universities, I always said, okay, I want to do something completely different than my parents.
Yeah.
And I laugh now, of course, because I ended up doing exactly what my parents did, which is just kind of how life works. But yeah, I think it was just meant to be. It was, I believe now so that it was part of God's plan. It just worked out. I was looking at a school in San Francisco, in California, and it was super expensive. We couldn't afford it. It was just ridiculous. And then my mom kind of started reaching out to Ozarks, seeing what could be possible, since I was, a daughter of an alumni, so like kind of a legacy. Since I was a dual citizen, I also was eligible for federal aid, FAFSA, which helped a lot. So I didn't have that restriction in federal aid that a lot of international students obviously do. So that helped, and it just worked out. So then I came and loved it, and I'm here now. So I guess that kind of cuts the story short.
Your mom was a Walton Scholar in which year? So
she was part of the second cohort of Walton Scholars.
Okay.
So she graduated in 1990, if I'm not mistaken. 1990.
Okay. And she met your father here at the university?
Yeah, so she met my dad here. and of course they got married and everything. She went back to Panama after having my brother was actually born in the U.S. and after he was born, my mom, felt that need to be closer to home and being closer to her family, to move back to Panama, and they both lived there ever since. And of course, I met my now husband at Ozarks too, so it's kind of that just how that story worked. It is
a cycle.
It was a full circle. I like to call it a full circle.
Yeah.
So I met my husband Aaron here at Ozarks, and I met him my sophomore year.
He studied here as well.
He studied biology at Ozarks. I don't know if I mentioned it already, but I studied political science and international business at Ozarks. I thought I only wanted to study international business.
Yeah.
And then I took a American National Government class with Dr. Scully, Mark Scully, and I fell in love with the fields. And that was it. That was history. And I became a double major. I then did political science as my primary major. And I just loved it. I loved every class. I took classes with him and Dr. Dipple. So it was a really great time.
Yeah.
It was a special degree.
Let's keep talking a little bit about your studies. And I want to ask this: were you a good student? When you were here at the university?
I would like to say yes, that I was a good student. You meet friends in college, and they kind of put you in these categories.
Yeah.
I wouldn't call it. I've always, even when I was in high school, I've always enjoyed learning. I've always appreciated education. And especially when I started digging more into my political science classes, they were just so intriguing. They were so interesting. So we would have 3 to 5, 4 different readings. And, I would do did I miss the reading? Of course. Did I show up to a class maybe one day unprepared? Yes. Did I not study enough for a test? And absolutely, that happens, I think, for anybody.
Yeah.
But I was able to manage having, at least for my political science classes, A's in all of them. In high school, I had really, really smart friends in high school. I wasn't top 3, but I was part of top 10, maybe number 7. So I think, yes, I've always respected education. Yeah. I've always respected just how much, again, hard work my parents and my grandmother had to put to carry us through education. So I've always enjoyed the part of learning and just do my best so that I, not only make my family proud of, but also be acknowledgeable of their investment in my education, right? And what do I give back to them for taking that commitment and sacrifice and giving that to me? So, yes, I think.
What was your GPA?
Oh, gosh. It was not a 4.0. If you ask my husband, he was definitely closer to the 4.0 than I was. I think he got only 1B in
the whole
college.
Yes,
wow. He's smart. He was a biology major. I think I was summa cum laude. So that's the Latin honors that you get if you're, I think, 3, I'm going to get this wrong, but 4, 3.95, 3.8 range. Yeah. I think that's right. Don't quote me. But I was summa cum laude, so I think it was close to 4, but it wasn't 4. Yeah.
What is the worst grade you had when you were in college?
College composition.
That's the one before academic writing.
So when I was in school at Ozarks, we didn't have the Lens program, right? But you still had to take distribution credits. So you had to take a kind of like an Ozarks seminar freshman level class, but it wasn't Ozarks seminar. So my class was actually with Dr. Shook. It was called Art on the Edge. So it was completely different. It was led by faculty. It was a really cool class. I learned a lot. We even had a graffiti artist come to one of our classes one day. And then you had to take college composition 1 and 2.
Okay.
So academic writing is really just those 2 together in a sense. But you had to take college 1 and college composition 2. You had to take a math class, so I took college algebra. But then you also had to take a science with a lab and a PE credit and a music, not like an art credit. and then a history. So you had to take a lot of different things that eventually sum up to the minors now. So yeah, college composition, absolutely. And then after college composition, general psychology with Karen Jones.
What was your grade with that?
I think I got a C.
Oh.
Yeah. With college comp, I think I got a C as well. I think those were my lowest ones.
Yeah, you didn't experience the Lens program, so
No.
you didn't experience it. But you have seen it, how it's like it has been evolving here in Ozarks since it started. What will you say is the best like system, this or the previous that the university had?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think, and you know, I hear and I meet with a lot of students, and I am a Ozarks seminar professor now as well. So I teach the Ozarks seminar classes. This is my second year doing it. So I've heard from freshmen, different, not just only international students, about the Lens program. And I could see how it works for some students, right? Because if you're a student that has different hobbies and interests, and it's easy for you to tie those, like, oh yeah, I loved drawing, so I'm going to do art, but I really want to study biology, but maybe I want to open my business. And they're really clear. So there's a good group of students that it works. Then there's a group of students that need a little bit of help, some guidance, advising, and it takes time. And I think in some aspect, the Lens program may help guide those students to find interests that they may not have explored in the past. So I see the value in that too. And with the Lens program, you know, I was an admission counselor at one point too. We always talked about it doesn't just help your first job, but your second, your third job. Could have I added minors when I was a student? Probably. It was just not a thing. But with the distribution course credits that I had to take, I could have probably earned minors if I would have focused those differently. Then yes, I think it's a really interesting aspect, the Lens program, to be innovative, to be co-curricular, to try to shape and form liberal arts. I think it's quite intriguing for students. I think we could have more options and maybe make it, you know, to be just relevant with the, you know, popular majors and minors that are going on today. But I think there's some value in it.
If you could go back in time and maybe choose between two different Ozarks, and one of them had the regular system in which you got your degree, and the Lens program, which one do you think it will be more appealing for you?
You know, that's hard to say. I think if I look back at 2014, Nicole, you know, I would have probably come in and still try to do business. I think I would still find my way to political science, and that would be in the same Lens. I would probably ended up doing a double major anyway. See, and it's tricky. I don't know what I would have done my minors in. So I don't know. That's a tricky question, I think. You know, I'm really happy with what my education was at Ozarks then. I don't know. I think that with the career path that I've been in now, I would have probably, you know, had I wouldn't say I had a hard time. Probably had a hard time picking those minors, but I think it would have helped me. Maybe clear some career paths that maybe I wasn't too sure about when I was graduating. Because I went through different ones, right? I thought about the nonprofit world and diplomacy, and I thought about law school. So I could see like how all of those things would have helped me with the Lens program, I think, to clarify. Moving a little bit forward, after you studied here at Ozarks, did you keep pursuing like more like masters, something like that? Yes. So my husband actually graduated before I did. So he graduated in 2016, and I graduated 2018. So there's this 2 years. But when I graduated in 2018, he had already been working for a couple of years, and we both kind of wanted to go to do our master's together. So we decided to, well, first we found out that masters in Europe were cheaper, a lot cheaper than in the US. And we kind of just started applying and say, let's apply to all of these different schools. We wanted to study completely different things. So we said, let's just try to be in the same country. So we applied to schools in France. We applied to schools in Spain. We ended up staying in France. So I studied a master's of international relations.
Okay.
And that was immediately after graduating from Ozarks. So graduating May 2018, that summer I was in France. So we had moved to France that summer. And my husband studied a master's of public health at a school in France too.
Wow. So the education when you were back in France was in English or in French?
It was in English, thankfully. So I knew survival French.
Yeah.
We took French. I took French in high school. It was part of just the classes that you had to take. So I could survive. Knowing Spanish helps you a lot too when you're trying to speak French. So that was helpful. But the classes were in English. So I studied at University of London Institute in Paris. It was in Paris City Center, but my professors, my faculty were coming from the UK.
Oh, okay.
Because the program they had was in relationship with Queen Mary University in London. So my master program was for a year. And my faculty, so it was really intensive, but we only met for classes Fridays.
Oh, wow.
So it was Friday all day. And my faculty would come from the UK, get on the Eurostar on Thursday night, come up, do classes all Friday, and then leave that same afternoon to go back to the UK.
But I think there's like a train that comes directly from
the
London
Eurostar.
to,
So it goes underneath the English channel.
And the rest of the days, how were like for you?
Yeah, so, we didn't have much money. We were kind of using savings, and we had really fun jobs. So my husband eventually became a Eiffel Tower tour guide.
Oh, really?
Yeah, in English. And it paid really, really good money. So he would do tours when he wasn't in class, and I became a babysitter. So I would pick up this 3-year-old girl after school, and she lived her school was about 10 minutes away from where we lived in our studio, very tiny studio. And I would pick her up and then walk her home, because everybody walks or uses bikes, in Europe. We would walk home together. I would give her a snack, and then we just spend a couple hours just playing, taking care of her. And it was mainly because of the parents. They call them nunus. They want to expose their children to English from a very young age.
Oh, okay.
So a lot of students, a lot of people that come as au pairs, which is a type of visa, they're there to babysit pretty much, but they're either talking to children in Chinese or English or Spanish or Portuguese. And it's very, very popular. A lot of students become babysitters.
So you were only speaking English to the...
English.
Oh, wow.
So, mind you, there's a 3-year-old, okay? So the 3-year-old understands English, but she would only reply to me in French.
How was that interaction?
That was really, really interesting. I learned a lot. Because French toddler... so toddler French is really different than French.
Yeah.
And of course, she would have tantrums or things like that, which are normal in a toddler. But she was also very sweet. So she taught me French, and I taught her English.
She was teaching you French, and
she really did.
It was a double way there.
It was a double way, right?
Talking about also your hobbies, moving on from your education time and your masters in France. What do you do, like, in your spare time, usually?
Right. Okay. So Now I am a full-time mom. So my baby was born in April 22nd, 2021. So he's about to turn 2 in a few weeks. Yeah. So I think just, my son is a toddler, so a lot of time is with my son now. So we go to the parks. We go on hikes. Before my son was born, yes, Aaron and I used to go on a lot of hikes, a lot of outdoor trips, used to travel a lot, and we still do now as well as a family. Other pastimes, I used to enjoy photography when I was younger a lot, so I did that a lot when I was younger and through high school. And
you don't do it anymore?
No, I kind of, it was interesting because then when I was initially started dating Aaron, then he started getting like a kit for photography and vlogs, really? And he started doing video producing and editing. So then I became kind of like the subject of
his projects.
instead of the photographer.
What did he study?
He studied biology.
Oh, yep. What? How is that possible?
So he might have benefited from Lens too. Yeah. He studied biology. He originally thought he was going to become a doctor and go to med school, and life just had some other plans. Yeah. So a lot of time now is just spent with family. We do enjoy traveling, being outdoors, camping. I like to do yoga, so I try to, that is kind of like my wellness routine, reading books. I try to stay in that habit as much as I can, just for wellness,
For example, on a regular weekend, what is your, schedule? You say, going out or whatever.
So, my in-laws, so Aaron's parents live in Springdale, Arkansas, so about an hour and 45 minutes away. So if we're not in Clarksville over the weekend, then we'll probably be up there visiting with them. So Matthias, my son, spends time with grandparents. So I would say, daily house chores, laundry. So it's not as unusual, like meal prepping, things like that, your daily house things. We try to go to church on Sundays, and other than that, just spending family time together. We might, again, go to the park, or I like to bake things with Matthias, so we'll try to do baking together, and it's fun with a toddler. It's messier, but it's nice. Yeah,
it's nice.
Yeah, so a lot of house things that just come up, or little side projects, but just a lot of family time too.
That's great. We're going to move to the other side of Nicole, which is the professional part.
Yes.
And we're going to start by asking you this. Did you had any previous jobs after coming to Ozarks?
Right. So let's see. So when I was a student at Ozarks, I did work study. So that was my first job at Ozarks, was work study. I was a tutor. I was a note taker. Let's see. And then the most important thing that really kind of changed, dictated my path so far, was I worked for the international office when I was a student. When I was a student, the Walton director was Florence Lebois, or Flo Lebois. And I worked in the international office for her, and she really was, and I consider still her till this day, one of my most important mentors in my life. She was originally from France. She came to Ozarks a couple of years before I started, right around the time that I became a freshman. There was some transition directors, and she came along. But that was probably the most important job that I've had, was the work study job at the international office. And quickly, I was working with, it was located where the Student Engagement Center is now. And I kind of became in as the trainee because all the other students were graduating. So I quickly had to learn everything. At that time, we were doing international admissions. We were doing the Walton program. And Flo would leave for some time over the summer, and I would stay and work on everything, right? So I really, she became my mentor. I learned really quickly a lot of things, and she really, invested that time in training me and that energy and just trust. So I quickly learned a lot of the ins and outs of the program, international students, as a student. Yeah, so I was given that opportunity really early on. Yeah. So then I think my junior, senior year, I started working more hours. I was probably working about 20 hours a week. I did a little bit of a job at Vase and Vine, which is a florist company here in Clarksville. I did that. Another great job I had was kind of like an administrative part-time grant writer for Forrester Davis. Forrester Davis is also right here around the corner and provides services for just individuals with disabilities and children. It's great programs. So did that for them. I would look for grants to help, like, get playground equipment and things like that. So that was really special. And that took a lot of my senior year. I decided to work as much hours as I could my senior year.
Wow. And what are your actual job positions here at the university?
So let's see. If I go back a little bit, I graduated from my master's program. Well, even step back. I finished taking classes for my master's program, I think around May 2019. And at that point, we were just in our thesis portion of the program. And you didn't have to be in person to do that. You could go anywhere. And around that time, I was looking for jobs. Aaron and I were thinking, we were engaged at that time, so we were thinking of course, coming back to Arkansas was part of our plan. But where, where would I find a job now that I have a master's? So I applied to a couple of different things, and then it was quite interesting. I got a message from President Dunsworth. At that time, he said, "Hey, he said, we're looking for somebody to fill this role." It was a role for WISC director and international program manager. So what I'm doing now in 2019. And he said, "Do you know anybody who's interested?" And I was like, "Well, I'm actually looking for a job." So then I applied, right? But July 2019, I started working officially, like professionally, for Ozarks as a staff member. I first worked, my title was International Program and Global Outreach Manager. So I did that. So I wasn't WISC director then, but I worked really closely with them. And then from there, I became student life director for a little bit, on top of the international, kind of overseeing the programs and global outreach. And now it's international program manager and WISC director. It's kind of both.
Yeah. But they are hand to hand. They are kind of similar, right?
Right. So now, let's see if I break it down. The international program manager side of things is really, so because you're an F1 visa student, there's a lot of making sure, maintaining the F1 visa program and the J1 visa program, which is for exchange students. So working with the other designated school officials or DSOs. We have other two staff members, Monica and Lauren, that are DSOs, and that's part of that is the maintenance, applying for creating the new I-20s, guiding students through the F1 visa process, and then maintaining it to make sure that they don't violate their F1 visa. That's a huge part of that. Then there's the study abroad side of things. So encouraging students to study abroad, welcoming students from our partners abroad to study at Ozarks, and maintaining those global exchange relationships. Then it's the Walton program, of course, WISC director. And then this is my second year, as I mentioned before, doing the Ozarks seminar in the fall.
So we can say that you have 3 different jobs, right? The international outreach manager, the Walton director, and being the seminar.
Seminar is something that other staff do as well from the Jones Learning Center. And even, my supervisor, Dodie Peltz, teaches a class. We're all part of that seminar staff team. And I only do it in the fall. So I have one class in the fall that I've been doing.
What will you say is the most challenging part of having all those like responsibilities?
Yeah, that is a great question. Thinking about it, because I saw your notes before I came in, I think that the most challenging part is, I always worry about, am I serving each group of students as best as I can with as much, because my concern is always, if you want to have a meeting with me, or if the freshman students want to have a meeting with me, or making sure that I'm serving all of those types of populations with the same type of attention and energy and time and kind of dedication and being there for them. I think that's the most challenging part is time. It's making sure that I'm serving those populations the best way that I can.
I want to focus on one of those responsibilities that you have, which is the Walton Scholarship Director, because I want to put special focus on that because I think it's a very unique program in a lot of sense. So first I wanted to know, how did you end getting the job as a Walton Scholarship Director?
Right, so I was actually on maternity leave. So Matthias, again, he was born April 22nd, 2021. When I was on maternity leave, or a little bit right before, it was announced that the current Walton director was going to leave the institution. And, I had been working so closely with her, and through my experience with the program in the past, and with my relationship with the international student population and program, it kind of just transition-wise was offered as the next step. So when I was on maternity leave and the offer came along, I said yes, right? So I think it was mainly for that, for my background with the international student population, and given that I already had some experience with the program, I say I was trusted with taking the position.
What will you say is the best about working as a Walton Scholarship Director?
Wow, the best. Is having those conversations with students, meeting all the students. Recently we started traveling again to do the interviews in person, and we have been able to meet some of the alumni, hear their stories, hear just the impact that they've been have the last 5, 10, 20 years. It just moves your soul. So it's the students. It's being able to be there for them when I can, and being able to be a little grain in their life story is special. It's really special.
Do you like traveling to other countries, like to make the recruitment of the Walton Scholars?
Yes, absolutely. I've been waiting patiently for 2 years now. We kind of stopped in-person interviews for COVID. And a few weeks ago was the first time that we came back to do it in person. We now have 2 new Walton directors at Harding and JBU. So it was all of our, the 3 of us, our first time being in person in country. It was great. It was wonderful. Absolutely loved meeting the alumni, hearing their stories. It's great.
So this was the first time you went out to other countries to recruit them, in person, right?
Yeah, since COVID.
And I asked this to Dr. Clary as well, but I think he did it 2 or 3 times when he was a Walton Scholarship Director. But do you have any special moment that you remember from the whole experience of recruitment to the people? It doesn't have to be with the applicants, but your experience.
Yes. We've had I think it was in Costa Rica. It was in Costa Rica. in Costa Rica, I can't say their name right now because we haven't told them yet, but in Costa Rica we met a really, really special candidate. And he just impacted us just by the very moment he sat down. He traveled a very long way to be there. He told us he had to get up at 2 a.m. in the morning.
Well, maybe when are you planning to tell him that he won?
Well, he's not coming to Ozarks, so it doesn't. Yeah, I think he actually already knows, but it's okay.
Yeah, that's fine.
I think he actually
just
knows.
To make sure, because I'm planning to put this on Friday. So
okay, no, you're good. No, I think he already knows. But I won't share his name just for privacy.
Yeah.
But he shared with us that he had to wake up at 2 a.m. to get on a bus to be on the bus and make it to the interview in San Jose. And just, hearing his story, all that his family has been through, all the sacrifices that he has to make for himself and within him and his family, it's just life-changing, right? So being able, and I would go back and say that's probably one of the toughest parts of the jobs is you meet so many outstanding candidates that have very meaningful, important life stories, and you can't help them all, right? So in your interview day I think I would say this for my other directors too, it's one of the best days of our jobs, but it's also the hardest. Making those selections when you only have maybe one or two scholarships that you can present. It's the best day, but it's also the toughest.
This is something that I am curious about. When you, after getting the interviews with the applicants done, what a scholarship director does? They get in a room, stay the whole night thinking about it, or
no?
How
so
is it?
Yeah, I can't share all of our secrets. David and Seth would probably kill me. I say that jokingly, of course, but. No, we kind of, yes, we do talk it out all together. It doesn't take all night. It could take probably an hour or so. We have our system. Sometimes it takes longer. Sometimes we do need a day.
But you do it
together.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, we have a system. Yes.
So it's you do it together, but to tell the other, no, this will come to my university, and this can go to your university, something like that.
Yeah, we have a system. But yes, we kind of discuss, and as you meet candidates as directors, you can sometimes tell, well, this student might be a better fit here because of X, Y, and Z, major, background, values, and other directors see that as well. So yeah, we talk about it.
And how maybe the student can match with the university and the environment, right?
So all of those things are factors we consider.
Yeah. Okay. Also, I took note of this when I was doing the script for this episode. And it is worth mentioning, in my opinion, that after you took office as the Walton Scholarship Director here at Ozarks, maybe we, as the scholars, we started noticing maybe more strict enforcement of the rules here at the university regarding the Walton students. So my question is, how responsible were you for that, or what is your degree of participation in all that?
Right. So, and I'll go back to when I took when I accepted the role for WISP director. I was coming into a position as you all knew it then, right?
Yeah.
And I think President Dunsworth may have shared this already with you a little bit. It was going back to the time where we were doing grant applications, and I think he mentioned that in his episode too. It was a great one too. I kind of listened to it too. But it was back in that time, so really it wasn't my decision at all. It came from the foundation, and we were told to follow the rules. And if you look at it, it's really not that, the rules are anything different per se, because if you look at Harding and John Brown, they were following the rules, is more so of Ozarks was experimenting and trying to say, what if, and what if, and what if. And I think President Dunsworth agrees with that. But I think when, kind of like how he mentioned too, it was those exceptions were being abused, right, by some, and the completion, the success rate, and I can talk about that about what that means in our annual reports, was being questioned because we were not meeting those quotas, we were not meeting those goals, up to the point that it was status. If we weren't going back to what the model was intended for those guidelines, the scholarship was at stake for everybody, right? So, right, I was just told to do my job.
What will you say is the degree of power that a Walton director has to maybe suggest changes to the Walton family or something like that?
Sure.
What degree of power do you have, for example, as a Walton director, to make or suggest changes for the Walton Scholarship?
Right. So I will say we have a very open, communication stream with the foundation. We work really closely with a senior program officer at the foundation. So she is our kind of go-to person when it comes to, she evaluates our annual reports, our interim reports, our grant application, and she's our intermediary with the foundation board members, right? So, yes, that communication is open, it's available. They want us to reach out. They want to know how the program is doing. They want to hear from us, from the students. So there's a great sense of power. And I wouldn't say power, but there's definitely that sense of we want to hear from the program and how it's actually doing. And that's a question that, honestly, it's been asked multiple times from the foundation recently. What's going on? What are the students saying? And they're open to that, right? So if you look at it as it's open, I'd say there's a great degree in influence in that. And that's why, even though I may not have all the answers immediately, because I know it could be frustrating too, or change cannot immediately happen, it's not to say that it's not going on in the background, right? Because this scholarship, right, it's almost at its 38th year, 1985, is a long history, right? A lot of, yes, it has evolved. I think so. It's not the same as 1985 scholarship as it was. So there has already been some involvement in the scholarship, and I am happy to say that. So it's that. It's just it takes communication. But it also takes dedication, right? Investment from the directors. I would like to say that, with the directors at Harding and John Brown, we're all on the same page, and we oftentimes, even though I do have to, my first answer is going to be always, as the director had, what I have to tell you because that's my job. It doesn't mean, that directors aren't listening to the students' concerns and agreeing on our side and sharing that feedback with the foundation, because that's what we're doing right now. Going back to your power question, recently we had the opportunity to meet with Jim Walton and Lynn Walton, and I think
in person or
in person, right? So we requested a meeting. We said, hey, we're all new directors, fairly new. We want to reestablish and make a more robust relationship with the foundation. And they were happy to do so, right? So then again, that tells you, yes, like they want to hear from us, or, and it was very special. We went to Bentonville, to the Walton Family Foundation headquarters, and we met with Jim and Lynn Walton. And it was truly, a very special moment. And Mr. Sam and Helen Walton were the ones that kind of originated and created the program.
Yeah.
Jim is their son, right? Len is Jim's wife. And they're kind of the stewards of the scholarship right now that Mr. and Mrs. Sam and Helen Walton have passed away. So meeting with them, and he had really critical questions too, right? Like, how is the program doing? So yes, I think there's a lot of influence in that. I would say it's tricky, right? Because it cannot happen immediately, right? So I know President Dunsworth talked a little bit about the grant applications. So I was kind of making sure I had my dates right. So when you think about the scholarship, there's like, well, the money's there. Actually, no. Like, us as directors and as universities, we have to apply every 3 years to get the scholarship, to get the funding for the next 3 cohorts. So you are a 2019 cohort, right? Yeah. So the university applied for the funds that have, kind of funded your education back in 2018, before you were here. So it's it happens for that. So then 2019, 2020, and 2021 cohorts came under that grant, right? And then 2021, so last year, we applied and received approval for the next 3 cohorts to be fully funded. So that's why it's tricky, right? Yeah. Because those funds were set 2018. So see, that conversation, it's much larger than that. And going back, because I know you kind of want to mention those, maybe some instances that, we had to put more restrictions on or go back to the original guidelines. And then, yes, of course, that I think some students obviously were kind of taken aback or surprised or, what's next. For those grant applications, and it kind of goes back to you mentioning, what changed? Like, did you just make the decision from day to night to follow all the rules? Well, no, it's that grant application and our annual report that I share with y'all, it has those measurements of success, right? So you look at attrition rates. It looks every year we have to do this. We have to say, what's the graduation rate? What's the GPA? What's the percentage of students going back to the scholarship region? All of those percentages are taken into account to determine the success of the scholarship. And we have goals for those, right? Goal percentages. It goes back to that. We weren't meeting one of those goals. So that puts a red flag on, okay, if you're not meeting all your goals for your grant, it's challenging to then ask for an extension of that, right? If you're not meeting those goals.
That's another thing that I was going to ask you when you mentioned that you had that meeting with Jim Walton and his wife. I was going to ask you, how involved is really the foundation in this program? Because it can be just like you meeting with executives from the foundation instead of the people that is actually giving the money and the funds for this program to be alive. So how often, besides that interaction you had, that it was probably the biggest interaction that has ever happened between probably directors and the Walton family, but before that or after that, was there any type of interaction with, for example, Jim Walton regarding the program?
Right. So let's kind of break it down. So some of it is generational, right? So, when Mr. and Mrs. Sam and Helen Walton were alive and running the early years of the program, Mrs. Walton was here all the time. My mom has those stories of being at their home and sharing meals with them and getting their diplomas by Mrs. Walton. And she has her photo. She's sent me her photo every year. Here's my photo with Mrs. Walton. She's very proud of her photo. So, that program from its inception was kind of like their project, right? It was one of their first life projects was that program, right? So now from its inception, of course, the Walton Family Foundation has grown so much. There's new generations, there's more projects or different things. Yeah. I would say that the family, I believe so, and from our meeting with Mr. Jim Walton and Lynn, they're very much involved with the program. It may not be that I don't hear from it instantly down the line, but it goes through those channels, right? So President Dunsworth's part of the board. Our program officer says, hey, they're thinking about this. But about the program and how it's doing and wanting to, one of the first things that Mrs. Lynn asked was, tell me about your students. I want to hear about the students. Tell me about their stories. Where are they coming from? How are your students?
Maybe we should invite her or
right?
Mr. Jim Walton here.
So, yes, I think they're very much involved. And then, one of the first things they said is like, okay, we're going to share that with the family, right? So, yes, those conversations I think are definitely happening. They want to hear from our alums. They want to hear from our current students. And that's where us as directors come in and keep that fire going, right? Like, hey, keep inviting them, because sharing those stories, sharing those success stories, and keep it going. So I think it's both sides, right? Is the investment from a director perspective to keep feeding that, keep engaging, keep working that relationship, and then the foundation has always asked, right? Is us continuing to work that relationship and being available. I think it's the other part of it.
Maybe we can have one day here in the podcast too, Mr. Jim Walton, Maybe. Also, I wanted to ask you this, because I have heard many versions and positions on how Waltons feel about different things that have happened, rules being enforced now more. And some other topics that we're going to touch too, maybe like the allowance and how it hasn't been revised since long ago and all this, but we get angry, and sometimes I even feel that we get angry with the person, which is you.
The messenger.
Yeah. But if we think about it, it's not really you, because you work for the foundation in this case, right? As the Walton Scholarship Director, you have to follow those rules, and well, if you don't follow them, probably they will try to find someone that follows those directions. No,
I don't think it's that dire, really. I think we can kind of break it up a little bit. It's really not that dire. Right, so allowances. But my question here with this was, you always have had this like feeling that Waltons have had this anger toward all these situations. So how you personally handled all that, like maybe backlash that Waltons have sometimes had when we were given like the news that we were going to be impacted by something in the scholarship program? Right. Yeah, that's a very interesting question. Okay. So, it's one of those things that when I talk to my peers about it, right? I always try to put myself in the students' shoes as well, So personally, I didn't take it personally, I think about my friends that were Walton Scholars when I was a student. I think about they would have all reacted the same way, right? It was just it was my job to be the messenger in that position. So no, I wouldn't say that. I expected students to react in those type of ways. It was a big change. It was a big cultural change for the program and what students knew coming in, and those expectations were formed. If a student was maybe opposed to it, or even now, so if we're still having those maybe challenging conversations, I don't take it personally. I will always try to listen to the student as best as I can. If they're upset or if they share, things that maybe they do not agree upon. Yes, it is my it is my role to kind of emphasize what the guidelines are, because, the guidelines are there, and it is my role to communicate those and kind of oversee those.
Yeah.
But once I started learning more so too about the students' perspective and their stories, I learned that a lot of students didn't come in with the same path as other students. So, I've learned a lot from the students, I would say. And no, I don't take it personally. I don't try to judge the student for what they felt at that time. And I don't hold it against anybody, right? So I think I would hope, I know it's challenging to have those conversations sometimes. So yeah, yeah.
Also, you were mentioning before about the annual report, something that the Walton Scholarship has to do every year, right? Could you comment something like, how is the impact of the scholarship measured? What does the scholarship thinks that, it's working, so we will keep the program? What is the measurement or the criteria that they have?
So the biggest one is returning to home country and scholarship region.
And how does that makes them know that we're impacting our countries?
Right, because that's the goal of the scholarship, right? So how we track it on the report is for the next, so you're graduating, so we would do your cohort of graduates and the next four for 4 years, right? So we say, okay, the student is where? Are they in the home country? Are they in the scholarship region? What are they doing? Where are they working? And our program officer looks at those line by line, right? So that's how that measurement of success is it's one of the pieces, right? It's not all of it. It's one of the pieces. Can you put a number on actual impact? That's hard, right? It's really hard. But I think when you look at overall impact, and when we start listening to our alumni, the jobs they've created, they're CEOs, they're entrepreneurs, they're working in the government, and those stories come together, you can see it. It's hard to put that impact in an actual number amount. It is. It would be really hard to evaluate it. But if you look back at that first couple of cohorts that are now, and I would say they're prime time, and our business owners, and they've created so many jobs, and you can see it still works in that way.
So you say that the first criteria that the foundation maybe gets is to measure the success of the scholarship is us returning to our home country.
Yep.
I'm gonna kind of put this situation, what if in the case we return to our home country but we are unemployed for the 4 years maybe because there's no employment in our countries? Or maybe we study a major, I don't know, to put an example, in biology, and when they go back to their home country they start working in a call center because there's no other job. What's in that case?
So of course it can happen. That's when I would like to have students take a step back and look at 5, 10, 20, 25 years from now, right? Because a lot of the time we think that and I went through that too, we think we're going to have our dream job right out of college. It usually does not happen that way. So that's when we have to remind ourselves of then evaluating the alumni that are 15, 20 years out. Are they still in their home countries? Maybe not. But you ask them, what was those first few years like? And where are you at now? And you can see it's not going to be a straight line. It's a very up and down, and it can and that's life, right? So It's definitely a journey. I think obviously, with the first 4 years, it may be a call center job for some students, but then that may open other positions along the way in the company, or when the time is right, it may open you to other opportunities. So I think even if it's, starting somewhere small, because even if you look at students graduating from an American university and staying in the U.S., Americans, a lot of them are not going to start working at a multinational company or go straight into their dream job. It's going to be probably work from home telemarketer or intro level position at a bank, or those things are going to happen naturally, I think, no matter where you go. So I think when those situations happen, it's important for us to look at the overall impact and take a step back and look at the 5, 10, 20 years from now.
In your opinion, how is that with the 4-year policy of returning back to our home country? We help our countries. How do you think that by doing that we kind of are helping our countries?
Yeah, so it kind of goes back to what I just mentioned with those alumni stories. Yes, returning home within the first 4 years after graduation, I do believe it would motivate students to stay actually in the country for a few more years. But it's not to say, right, that person may not take a year and study a master's in Mexico. It's still affecting the scholarship region. Or then start working for a company or have an internship at a multinational company that serves or has clients in different countries in the scholarship region. The impact is there. I don't think that is in question. We recently met with a lot of alums and recent graduates, even so, maybe 5-10 years, they're still in their home countries, and some after the 4 years go on and maybe do a master's or PhD in Europe, or start working remotely from other countries, and then bring that back to their home country as well. Every life story is not going to be the same. I think it's going to be it's not going to be a straight journey. But I think even if during some point in your lifetime you've impacted a colleague, a peer, you've shared your ideas with a company in your home country, or you maybe influence a new generation or volunteered in a program, even though it may look really small, or even if it was just for 6 months or 4 years, you're putting your little grain of salt, right? And I think that's true. Yeah,
I had this statement that I was going to read to you, and I was going to ask an opinion from you about it. The statement that I once heard says, "We're not going to solve the problems our countries have by just staying there, nor we're going to impact our countries magically after finishing our studies, or even in the 4-year period or after that we're like, I don't know which word to use, forced to go back to our countries."
No, I wouldn't say forced. So that's a word I really, really have problem with, is forced.
Because we are, our transcripts are whole, and in special cases, like when you get to study in the scholarship region, you can get them, but you can't, for example, say, I'm gonna keep studying here a master's or whatever.
So I want to pause on the force. Force is a word that I really have problems with. And I'll tell you why. I do understand that students scholars in the program may have had different experiences before I became a Walton director, and the expectations of the scholarship. But the expectation, the core of the program, returning to the home country, has always been there, right? And it's the student chooses, I believe, each semester to take courses, be enrolled at the university, earn their degree, and stay. So I think, yes, I do understand that students may have different perspective of how that may have changed recently and being more, following the guidelines per se.
Yeah.
But I have a really hard time with the word forced, because the student chooses to be here every day, take those courses, earn their degree, knowing that those expectations are there after graduation. And that's what I told the freshman class that just came in, if that changes and, students can't see that, right? Like, it's the student's choice to still be here. So that's why I have a hard time with the word force, is knowing up front what the expectation is. The student chooses to be here.
Yeah,
so
and for every semester we have to spend 6 months back in our home region, right?
Right.
So let's put this case that a person quits the scholarship in their second year. Will the scholarship charge them for the 2 years that they were here and still have to go back to your home region?
So
how does that work?
I will say that I don't know, because I haven't had to experience that in the past. Of course, I've heard anecdotal things from different, like you, but I can't really speak to it because I haven't had to do that.
Because that gets into the same scenario that we're not forced, and you're right. But what happens if I have the freedom of saying I want to quit?
Sure.
And go back to my country?
Not everybody graduates, right? So we've had students that withdraw, or it just doesn't work out, or academics fall through. Again, there's a lot of anecdotals really back early in the day of students being dismissed. I'm not going to dismiss anybody. I really don't want to.
Dismissed by the director?
Yes.
Okay.
early on, that was the thing. Wow. We don't do that.
Yeah.
I don't like sending anybody home, even though y'all may think I want to. I don't want to send anybody home. So, going back to that, right, I've never, in my experience, I haven't seen the foundation say, okay, they got to pay us back. I don't think that's it. It would be counted as part of our annual report. It would be counted against that success rate, right? That's where it would be. A student withdraws or leaves or something happens, it would be counted against in our annual report, and they would see that, right?
Yeah.
But there's there's medical emergencies, there's things that happen with family, there was COVID. Like, I think the foundation was really understanding with a lot of those things. So yeah, that's tricky.
For example, in this topic of returning back to our home region, we have to spend the 4 years in that region. After that, we're like, our transcripts will not be retained anymore. That's what I understand. So we will have the freedom to basically
I would say opportunity.
Yeah, opportunity. Sorry.
Language is key.
Yeah. To come to study here to the U.S., let's say, or to any other country around the world, whatever the country that is.
Yeah.
What will you say about that? Maybe in your personal opinion, or in your hat as Walton director, as you say. Maybe both. I think both opinions, like your personal opinion as Nicole England and your personal opinion as the Walton Scholarship Director. What will you say about a student after the 4 years of staying in our home region, getting our transcripts, and keep like pursuing a career, studying here in the U.S., or maybe even staying in the U.S., working after that? What will you say?
I think absolutely. Go ahead. I've seen, and I think both opinions go hand in hand with both hats.
Yeah.
So I'll give you an example. When I was a student, I met a couple of Walton scholars that were graduating soon. they spent, their 4 years back home. And then my first year working here in 2019, they were both best friends. So they've worked some. And that's the other part of it. Doing master's degree, not in all majors, but in some majors, doing master's degrees or PhD programs are often more beneficial once you've kind of worked in the field a little bit. Now, again, I'll pause. Not for all situations, some. So sometimes it is better for a career path to kind of wait a little, see where you may want to invest or dig a little deeper, work in the field a little bit, make sure that you want to do. That's my personal kind of side talking about that. Before you invest in education again, I would really encourage all students to kind of work in the field a little bit before committing to, postdoctoral, the next step, absolutely. Because it doesn't work for all majors, but with some.
Yeah.
And going back to the student, they applied for, both students, best friends. One of them applied to a fully funded type of scholarship, kind of similar in Europe. Both of them, but different ones. One is in the UK. It's called the Chevening Scholarship. Yeah. And the other one is in Fundación Carolina in Spain. Fully funded master programs, kind of similar as WES. Those scholarship programs are by the government of each country. They also require their applicants to return to their home country. And it's their way of those governments, again, going back and investing in education and development in those countries. And that a lot of alums have used both of those scholarships because it's available for Central America and Mexico, right? So sometimes it may be, yes, I'm going to do my master's in Europe, but I'm also going to come back home. And we've seen that a lot of times. We've seen a lot of stories of alums that earned their degrees, and some do stay, and now they're working at Walmart. Now they're working at, in Europe or France, and I think that's wonderful. And some do return to the scholarship region, or on the other hand, they may be working for the headquarters in China or France, but it's a company that provides services for the region similarly. So I think, in a sense, when we talk about those impact stories overall, it's wonderful what it could become in the opportunity that it has for students. And, it may become that after that person has that experience in Europe, they want to create their own company and provide, jobs or internships or mentoring for populations in their home region. Like, a lot of those things are happening right now. So yeah, absolutely. Study.
Also, with the topic of the Walton Scholars and everything, we were talking before about the selection process. Maybe it's a little bit secret, but you mentioned you have your own system to selecting the new Waltons, and as far as you can tell us, and as far as it can be public, what is the basic criteria for the selection of the scholarships for the people that is coming, or maybe what are the guidelines from the foundation on who deserves or not the scholarship? Is it like merit-based, or is it based on economic backgrounds, something like that? How is it?
So I'm going to turn the question around. I'm talking to you, right? You're it, right? That's what we're looking for, is a student like you were when you applied, right? And it's really not that the foundation is, with a magnifying glass in our interview seeing who we pick or not. We're looking for student leaders, and that's everything that you get when you apply. We're looking for, we look at GPAs, but a lot of students come with a strong academic background once they get to that final round. So everybody has good grades, of course. Yes, there is a financial need piece, But if you make it to that threshold, right, you make it to the final round of interviews, we're really not, the goal of the scholarship is to select those students that we see those values, we see those student leadership skills, they can carry on the mission of the scholarship, also, fit in the universities. They're going to be good students as far as we know, but they always have that grit. They have that grit, they have that endurance, that encouragement, passion, creativity, like all of those qualities that you can probably, I hope that you would see in yourself and in your friends and your peers. That's what we look for.
Also, I wanted to ask you about this because, this was surprising to me when I experienced, not firsthand, but from a friend and then from another friend here studying here in the university. There's an issue with, I don't know if it is with other majors, but specifically with education, the education major. Back in like 2020, you were not the director by then, but I had a friend that applied to the scholarship twice. The first time, I think both times she applied for the same majors. You have to fill a form and state your first option as a major, your second option, and in both of them she put education. And when she applied the first time, she went until the final stage. She met with the Walton directors. The second one, she wasn't even taking count, not even for the first interview with the alumni. So I have heard all this issue with the education major, and even once I heard a rumor saying that you were no longer accepting more Walton scholars that were from
rumors.
that.
They get us a long way. So no, that's not true.
It's not true?
No, Andrea Macario just graduated with an education major.
And it was not from her. Just I didn't hear it from her. It was something that I heard before.
Even so, this cycle I've selected, I think at least 3 education majors. So no, that I wouldn't say that's true. What I probably could say is that, when you look at the other universities in Ozarks, Ozarks is the one that has always been more of the liberal arts education, right? So majors-wise, yes, and even back in the day, this is when we talk about how the scholarships evolved. Most students were business majors, right? And that was it. It's evolved since then. We have all sorts of type of majors, and then Harding and John Brown were more of the STEM degrees, the engineers, the computer science, the data analytics, all of those. Ozarks was that liberal arts, also, and that's how I think Lentz works really well with that. So when Ozarks, looks at majors, there's really, it's I would like to say the directors look at the candidate first, right? Because if a student has made it to the final interview, it's because the major is permissible, right? And then from there, that's when it becomes tough to pick, between all the great students is which one's going to come. So no, I think as long as, and this is something we tell the committee too, is as long as a candidate, especially for Ozarks, as long as a candidate can share with us what their career aspiration is with that degree, okay, and how they're hoping to utilize it in their home country, in the region, and then can share that with us in a thorough manner. We may have some follow-up questions. That's what I'm looking for.
Also, we have another issue that we mentioned before, that was the allowance, and how it has been fixed in $125 since I don't know how much time. Do you know when was the last time specifically that it was revised?
I don't recall. I think our other directors were trying to do the math too with their, I think it might have been, President Desert said maybe 7-9 years. I think that's about right. Yeah.
Yeah, and the issue with that is that, well, $125 are not the same worth as it was 10 years before, probably. Even this year, at the beginning of the year, we had a crisis with eggs, and they were really expensive. Yeah, they're still expensive. We don't own cars, but with fuel, if fuel gets expensive, everything gets expensive. So do you think right now $125 is enough for allowance for us as students here?
Right. So I think we have to go back, and I think President Dunsworth mentioned this as well, is what's the purpose of the allowance? What is it supposed to cover? And what needs are meant to be met with that allowance, right? So I think that's where that would have to be evaluated. If you're looking at basic necessities, of course, things are definitely more expensive. Like, I cannot disagree with you that, you know, if you buy a big jug of Thai you're out, you know, like, or if you need to buy medicines or allergy medicines or even Tylenol, you know, some of the freshmen ladies share with me, like, sanitary products for women, like, those things are expensive, right? I mean, I do groceries every week. So yes, I think that definitely things are more expensive now than they were before. I think when we look at, because we started having that conversation already with the foundation of the allowance increase, we would have to go back to that, is what is it supposed to be covered? What's the purpose of the allowance? Because it's not meant to cover everything outside of, you know, personal necessities, basic needs. What do those means? What are those needs? And I would hope that when we get ready to reevaluate this discussion, as we continue to work with that, that's when the students' feedback becomes important, right? So I think, I don't know if that answered it, but it's kind of...
Yeah. In what degree of conversation is this topic of the allowance right now with the foundation?
Yeah, so we've definitely brought it up, and they've asked us to do a thorough evaluation over the summer and report back. Yeah. So
it can be something that can be revised and probably changed for next fall? Or it's not that easy, right? It's
not that easy. You got it.
It probably has a lot of process.
And we're applying for a new grant in 2024.
Maybe with that grant it can come
maybe, yes. Yeah. Hopefully.
And the issue with the allowance sometimes come because well, even in my personal opinion, we are international students as well. But besides that, we're Walton scholars, and sometimes I feel being a Walton scholar puts a bigger wage on us than being an international student. And I don't want to put the chaps in a bad position with this, but it has happened to me personally. I know that the university has a food pantry program here for students in need when they have when there are these big breaks like the one we had last week, the spring break. And it happened to me only once. After that, I didn't try anymore, to be honest. But I tried to get some food for a break, one of the big breaks. And the response I got was that the Walton Scholarship already was paying all of our necessities, and besides that, we were already given $125. So, and I mean, you mentioned it. You do groceries every week. In 4 things in Walmart, you already spend like $70 maybe. So it's not, for a week, for only one person, it's not that much of money. And then we have these situations that we have, like with the food pantry. So what do you think about that type of things, on how can we like work on those to make more accessible for Walton scholars to those programs?
Okay, so let's see. So I would like to say that I know that when Chaps sends that out, he does have a little clause on there that says, if you believe, it's not word by word, but if you believe that your circumstance is, extraordinary, or he says, go talk to Nicole.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's where that conversation starts, because yes, I mean, even though, a lot of the times Walton Scholars may put everybody on the same boat,
Mm-hmm.
each situation is going to be completely different, right? So that's one of the times where depending on what's going on, I would, reach out to me and let's see what's going on. I think one of the opportunities is when we do more break programming. So the student life team, especially over the winter break, did a lot of food programming, right?
Mm-hmm.
So maybe if it's not specifically the food pantry, right, is the other things that the student life team has started to do to have more food opportunities for all students, right? So if you think about it that way, I think things are being done, maybe not directly with the food pantry program, but for the winter break, there's a whole room full of supplies and things for students, and then the student life team had a meal that they hosted every other week for students. So I think those things have evolved, right? That was not a thing when I was a student.
Mm-hmm.
We did not have a food pantry. We did not have a lot of food programming like that. I would ride my bike to Harps.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. So I've been there, right? So I think it may not be as, because the food pantry is also a very specialized program. We look at international students as a whole. Ozarks has a very diverse population, right? So when you look at specifically the food pantry program, it's not to say that, Waltons may be, if you try to put them at a ladder or pole or anything, but you're still trying to serve the need of the population as a whole as international students. So I think that's where, having those conversations with me as a director to figure out what's the need or what else may be going on, helping students connect with host family programs, still motivated, and on my side, I motivate and incentivize the student life team to do more of this programming. That's where we can share kind of the load and try to meet that need, I think.
Yeah. Okay, we're going to get into the final part of this conversation today, and this part, I always try to do a dynamic with my special guest, and it's one word or a short phrase answer on different questions. They're easy questions, so don't worry. The first one is favorite color.
Ocean blue.
Ocean blue. That's very specific. Wow.
You can see it in my phone.
Yeah. What is the first thing you do when you wake up in the morning?
Pee. I go to the bathroom, honestly, for being honest.
Yeah. Religion?
But water.
Okay.
I have to drink water too.
Religion?
Catholic.
Mm-hmm. What is your favorite time of the year?
Spring.
Spring. Why?
Because it's not too hot and it's not too cold.
Yeah. That's true. It's getting better, the weather lately. What makes you angry?
Oh, man. What makes me angry? That's tough. Not that I don't get angry. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah, that's what I was
going
to ask you.
No, I mean, we all have our moments, absolutely.
Maybe your song?
No, oh my gosh, no. He is such a blessing. I would say maybe... yeah, I think you got me with that one. I don't know.
I didn't know it was going to be that difficult,
Yeah. Because, you think about it and you're like, okay, well. But, okay, I think what makes me angry would probably be disrespect.
Disrespect.
Yeah, I think, I hold a lot of family and values, and disrespect.
What would you buy if you receive a gift of $1 million right now?
$1 million? I don't know what I would do with $1 million.
Yeah. The first thing that comes to your mind, what will you do? What will you buy?
A house.
A house.
Yes.
Here in Arkansas?
Maybe.
Yeah.
Yes. We're trying to save up for a house. I think that's the first thing that came to my mind is a house. Mm-hmm.
That's great.
I wouldn't spend $1 million on a house. No.
But it will be the biggest investment from
Probably
that money.
go to the house. Yes.
Okay. Morning person or afternoon person?
Afternoon, night person.
Okay. Favorite music genre?
I think it comes in waves. Can I have 3?
Yeah, sure.
So right now I listen to a lot of Christian music, reggaeton, and then a lot of like alternative, indie, folk, that genre.
And also, if you could like put your top 3 artists.
Top 3 artists.
Yeah.
Okay. So the first one is really close to like a child, like teenager Nicole. Teenager Nicole would say Muse. There's a British rock band. That may come to a shock as a lot of you. Oh man. I think Coldplay is up there as well. And then Rubén Blades.
He's from Panama, right?
He is, yes.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, I have noticed that a lot of really highlighted artists are from Panama, Rubén Blades.
El Sesh.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, another question. A job you dreamed you to have when you were a child?
Photographer.
TV shows or movies?
TV shows.
What is your favorite TV show?
Friends. Yes.
And what is the last TV show you watched?
Okay, don't laugh. I'm watching the TV show from Georgina Rodriguez.
Oh,
the
really?
wife of Christian. So soy Georgina.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah.
And how is it?
Oh, I think it's great.
Good?
Yeah. So I don't really watch a lot of reality TV, but it's just amusing. Yeah.
Oh, it's nice. On Netflix, right?
It is.
Oh.
Yeah.
Cats or dogs?
Dogs.
Do you have a pet?
I don't. My in-laws have dogs, and I grew up with a dog too, so dogs.
And the final question, a really important one. What happened with the book signed by Jim Walton?
I knew I was going to ask you. So, okay. So I'm working on something else for you. It's a surprise.
Oh.
So, yes. We'll see.
Okay.
We'll see. I can't give too much away. I don't know yet, but I'm working on something.
Okay. Well, I got surprised, huh? Finally.
No promises, but I'm trying to work on something.
That's great. Okay, the final thing is I give you the opportunity for you to ask me whatever you want. It can be anything.
Okay. What is so far, what has been your favorite memory from your time at Ozarks?
Like in Ozarks or experience while being in Ozarks?
Either or.
I think.
Yeah.
Because in Ozarks, I don't know, there have been a lot of things that have made me feel I'm like in the movies, the classic American university, the events that the university organizes. There have been a lot of events that I remind a lot. In 2019, I remember once they brought a really good band that was maybe a little bit underground, but they had really good music. I think their name is Knox Hamilton. They came in 2019, and that was maybe something that really marked me in the sense that it was my first semester here in the US, the first time here in a new country and experiencing all those situations. And maybe something that I could highlight from experience while being here at Ozarks could be the one that I got to experience probably last month when I went to the conference in New York City. And, I was able to experience all that, explore the city itself, and just like maybe getting some feedback on what I've been doing since last year with the radio show. So I think that's maybe the biggest experience I have had so far in Ozarks.
Great. That's awesome.
Yeah. Any
Good.
final comments that you would like to add before ending this interview?
No, I mean, just thank you. Thank you for having me. And thank you for creating this podcast. I think it's really cool. I enjoy, like you talked about, one of the favorite things of the job, and this is one of them, right? Like it's seeing students go and find their passions and see them graduate and see what happens next. I think it's really exciting to get to witness that.
Yeah, I appreciate your time. I really enjoyed talking with you. And thank you to everyone who listened to this episode of the CDRB Show. I'm Christian Rodriguez, and you can follow us on Instagram at CDRB Productions. And I'll see you next time.